Haters on a walk, haters on a walk. I'm gonna make a video while I'm going on a walk. I'm feeling some type of way, guys. I'm feeling good. Today's a beautiful day, you know what I mean? I actually ended up watching a little bit. I mean, I watched all the matches of Judgment Day, but I did skip forward past a few of them. So here are my thoughts about what happened last night. Now, you know, I will admit this was a little bit better than I thought it would be, considering everything I said, but not a good event. First of all, I turned it on, and the good thing about this was that we didn't have to wait too long for, well, not Judgment Day, what's it called? Hell in a Cell, that's it, Hell in a Cell. Judgment Day is the group, cucks. So, we didn't have to wait too long for the women's match to start. Obviously, I had no desire to watch this whatsoever. Now, I will say this, like, for a women's match, it wasn't complete garbage. Like, the crowd was into it, you know, there were some good things about it. But I will say that the match was very botchy, as expected. None of these girls really are that athletic. I mean, Bianca Belair is obviously the most athletic, but even she is like, she's athletic in the sense that she can perform. Like, she can probably run faster than your boy, you know what I mean? She can maybe lift more than me. I doubt it, to be honest. But, you know, she's athletic in that sense. But in terms of, like, fluidity, you know, she's not that great. Like, she can do a flip, but so what? You know, the moves look awkward. These girls don't know how to work with each other in the sense that they don't know how to, like, exchange moves and take moves and do moves. Case in point, at one point, Asuka tries to do the Asuka lock. It looks horrible. She's not doing it right. And the announcers are like, they're not sure whether she's got it locked on or not, you know, so they have to pretend she does, right? A lot of little botches here and there, a lot of, like, tumbling around. It was just very low level, and nobody wants to see this, you know what I mean? I didn't really enjoy it overall, but there was a few good things. Number one, it was the first match, so I was able to fast forward most of it. Despite this, I saw a million botches. And, you know, the finish was pretty cool too. Like, what's it called? Becky Lynch hits the manhandle slam, also known as the rock bottom. Bianca Belair comes in, throws her out of the ring, and pins Asuka. That was pretty clever. You know, it's in a way, it's like Becky Lynch did half the work or 90% of the work, but she didn't do 100% of the work. So she's not the champ. You know, that was pretty nice. For what it was, I say it was pretty decent, right? Next up, we had Lashley and Omos Lashley versus Omos and MVP in a handicap match. The most interesting thing about this was how over Lashley was. It was pretty crazy how over he was. I didn't really realize that he'd be this over, you know? Like, I understand that Omos and MVP suck, but it's like, bro, like, Lashley, I mean, he got the reaction of, like, a champion, you know? Like, just this reaction alone makes me believe that Lashley should go for the title again, you know? I don't think he's good enough to dethrone Roman Reigns in terms of, like, the way that they're both booked. But nevertheless, this was a good showing from Lashley. It was a good reaction from the crowd. I did not expect this, you know what I'm saying? Next up, we had Kevin Owens versus Ezekiel. Kevin Owens wins in what was this night's most meaningless match of all time. I mean, let's be real. Like, who cares about this? Like, where's this going, right? Like, is Ezekiel going to, like, you know, eventually become Elias? And if so, why would anyone give a rat's ass about that, right? Kevin Owens, I mean, this guy, I don't understand why he has a job. Like, he's a decent mid-carder in the sense that he can go out there and he can put on a match with, you know, not many botches and things like that, but a lot of people can do that, you know? That's not special enough. You know, him saying you're Elias, like, it's just whack, you know? It really felt like an undercard match, and it was a good positioning for it as the third match on the card. Next up, we had Judgment Day, which is Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley versus AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and Liv Morgan. Finn Balor did not join Judgment Day, which I think he should have, but whatever. The match was pretty good for what it was. They did the whole mixed gender element pretty well. In the end, Finn Balor is going to go for the coup de grace. Rhea Ripley just stands in front of him. She's about a foot bigger than he is, right? And he's like, get out of the way, basically, right? Liv Morgan attacks her, right? But this is just enough time for Edge to roll out of the way from the coup de grace. Finn Balor, like, even though he misses, he, like, falls on his face. Like, it's really weird. It's a double foot stomp. It's like, if you miss, you should just be on your feet. You know, like, when he hits it, he doesn't have this reaction. And when he hits it, he lands on a person's body, you know? And the person's body is not flat like the ring is. So it's like, when you land on someone, you should have a greater recovery time. But for some reason, Finn Balor doesn't. He misses, and I guess the point is that he missed, right? He misses, and then Edge spears him and pins him 1, 2, 3. Good match for what it was, but Edge and Judgment Day need to move forward with something else, because just having meaningless matches against AJ Styles and friends is just not good enough. It's not compelling enough, you know? Who wants to see that, right? Nobody. Then we had a pretty good match between Madcap Moss and happy Corbin. You know, I didn't watch most of it because, I mean, how could I? But the finish, man, the finish. Madcap Moss was made this night. And I've been singing the praises of Riddick Moss for a while, you know. I've always thought this guy had something, you know. I'm not saying that he's the next Rock or anything like that, you know. But I remember when he beat Ricochet, like a few years ago, when he was Riddick Moss, he just had a one-on-one match with Ricochet, and everyone was like, wow, I can't believe Ricochet's being buried. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, of course Madcap Moss should be beating Ricochet. I mean, look at Madcap Moss and look at Ricochet. It's axiomatic that Madcap Moss should be winning this match 10 times out of 10. You know, the finish of the match was pretty dominant. Madcap Moss hits the punchline. He kind of botched it, but it was more Baron Corbin's fault because he fell down because he's a big guy. But he hits the punchline, and then he gets like a chair and puts it around the throat of Baron Corbin, and then smashes the other side of the chair with the steel steps. I couldn't believe they actually did it. You know, I know that this doesn't hurt as much as it looks like it hurts, but it looked brutal. It looked vicious. It's like, holy shit, man, like nobody should be able to kick out of this. And it was the most dominant win I've seen in a long time. Where this was like, he was like the sidekick of Baron Corbin, and he just beat the shit out of him. It was great. It was just great to see. Madcap Moss, I like him, you know. He should be a solid mid-carder. He should take like the Kevin Owens spot. But it is what it is. Next up, we had Theory versus Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali. Sorry, not Mustafa. Mustafa Ali. Right? Mustafa Ali is introduced as Chicago's own. Right? And he comes out with a shirt that says Shy Ali. Right? And I'm like, all right. Like, this has job written all over it. Like, I knew at that point that Theory was going to win. Obviously, Theory has greater potential than Mustafa Ali, who sucks. And no mention was made of his days in Retribution, which I understand. But they kept saying, like, oh, Mustafa Ali has had such a hard road to even get to WWE. What was the hard road? He was chosen to be in the Cruiserweight Classic after some jabron dropped out. I mean, like, why is that a hard road, you know? Like, Mustafa Ali, his entire character is like, if anyone here knows about Nietzsche talks about slave morals, right? Like, the Mustafa Ali character is all about slave morals. It's all about woe is me, I suffered a lot. It's just this bitch-ass character, this pussy who just keeps complaining, you know? And there's no room for this, in my opinion, in mainstream wrestling. Whereas Austin Theory's character is not like that at all. Austin Theory's character is a classic I'm better than you guy, you know? And it's this whole, like, young guy, you know, future ahead of him. This guy's only going to get better character, right? Which is not very original, it's not very good, but it fits him, you know? It fits him. He does have the look in the sense that, like I said before, he looks kind of stupid, but he's jacked. You know, this guy is just straight up diesel. I mean, like, he's like basically a cruiserweight. Like, he should be a cruiserweight, but because he goes to the gym, he's like a heavyweight, you know? Like, that's the difference. Like, his biceps, like, when he flexes, you're like, holy shit, this guy's jacked for a guy that wrestles the way he does. Like, if you compare him to, like, Grayson Waller or to, like, Justin Gabriel, it's like, those two look like cruiserweights. Or like Sami Zayn, right? Sami Zayn could have this physique if he worked really hard, you know? And that's why he's Sami Zayn, and this guy is Austin Theory, the youngest U.S. champion of all time. Motherfuckers! So he beat Mustafa Ali. The ending was a little bit weird, but basically, like, he beat him pretty decisively. He hit the 8-count down, which is a pretty fun move. And he pinned Mustafa Ali. Hopefully, this is the last of Mustafa Ali, or at least the last of him in a while, because I don't like the motherfucker, all right? I never have, and I never will. What do you think of them apples? Then next up, we had the main event. The main event was pretty good. I'm not going to lie. Now, it was pretty good, primarily in my opinion, because Cody Rhodes, when he took off his little vest, the bruise that he had on his pectoral muscle that he apparently tore, was insane, motherfucks. And it wasn't just the bruise, because the bruise is whatever. You can do that with some makeup, you know? But you could tell, like when he stood profile, you could tell that the pec that had the bruise was swollen like a beast. It was like almost twice as big as the other pec, not in a good way, in like a sickly way, in like an unhealthy way. So it really, really elevated this match into something else. You know, it made Cody Rhodes seem badass. It made him seem like a guy that's like not out there to take the easy road. You know, he's willing to fight injured. He's trying to prove a point. You know, this did more for Cody Rhodes' character than anything he's done in Independence, as far as I'm concerned. However, I will say this: after Cody Rhodes decisively destroyed Seth Rollins, right? Basically, Cody Rhodes no-sold a Crossroads, which is fine because that's Seth Rollins' move. He hit 2 Crossroadses, and he was going to hit the third, but he dropped them, picked up the sledgehammer, and just lunged to hit him in the head with the sledgehammer and pinned him 1, 2, 3. This was a complete cucking of Seth Rollins. If Cody Rhodes then went and fucked Becky Lynch in front of him, it would not be worse. It would be the same level of cuckery because Seth Rollins has been jobbed out to this jobber 3 times. Now, I understand. Cody Rhodes is much more marketable than Seth Rollins. He has a look. He has a story. He's in better shape. Seth Rollins, I see him, every time I see him, he's like chubbier and chubbier. It's inexcusable. He used to be like jacked. He used to be like cut as shit. Now he's like flabby looking, you know? Now, I understand there's pros and cons. He reminds me of Naito from like 2 or 3 Wrestle Kingdoms ago, where it's like this guy has no business being in this position, you know? He can still go. Like, his abilities are still where they always were. Seth Rollins is still one of the best. I'd say he's like top 2 after like AJ Styles in terms of like in-ring ability. Like in terms of making moves look good and having like cool moves, right? Cesaro would also be there in that sense, in the sense that he can do a lot of cool shit and he looks great in terms of like he's ready to go. But Seth Rollins didn't. He didn't look ready to go. So visually speaking, it's like, of course Cody Rhodes needs to go over Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, like his character basically now is just like, I'm really, really good. That's it, you know? But how is he really, really good if he just lost 3 times to Cucky Rhodes? You know, it doesn't really make much sense to your boy. But it is what it is. I get it. They're pushing Cody Rhodes high. However, it's time now for Cody Rhodes to do something else. And maybe start Seth Rollins on some sort of redemption storyline, demote him and have him wrestle like fucking Austin Theory or something and lose to him a few times. You know, before he eventually does something and maybe one day gets a title shot against Cody Rhodes if Cody Rhodes becomes champion. Because now that's on the cards now, motherfuckers. Cody Rhodes becoming world champion is now on the cards. He just beat Seth Rollins 3 times. And more importantly, beating him 3 times, he recently beat him at Hell in a Cell in the main event while he was basically fighting injured, right? This is such, like, the amount of putting over that happened in this match is almost unprecedented. I've never seen someone get put over so much. Like, Seth Rollins lost to Cesaro like 2 WrestleManias ago, right? And it was supposed to be this big moment for Cesaro. But they had a competitive match where Cesaro was the heavy underdog. Even though we all knew he was going to win, he was presented as the heavy underdog, as the guy that never made it. Cody Rhodes is being presented as if he's been WWE champion like 20 times before. People are forgetting that he used to be Stardust up in this piece, right? And Seth Rollins is like a consistent main eventer. I mean, in my opinion, he's like a mid-card level wrestler in terms of like his whole presentation, but he's in the main event. Now you can plug him into the main event and it just feels normal, like, you know, at this point. But Cody Rhodes beating him like this was ridiculous. He didn't even like at least in their second match, he reversed like a roll-up and pulled the tights. In this third match, he beat his ass. After having like a severe injury, he beat the shit out of this guy, and then that's what happened, you know what I mean? So that being said, the match itself was pretty good, all those things considered, but it didn't feel like a main event. It felt like a mid-card match. But it is what it is. Seth Rollins has been destroyed, and Cody Rhodes has been made. And with that, motherfuckers, I look forward to seeing what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know. Like, what should happen? What do you guys think should happen? I mean, should Cody Rhodes get a main event push? I don't know. We'll see. That being said, this has been The Hater. Go fuck yourselves.